I'm Jack Berryman, ACSM historian, and we're here this afternoon talking with Mike Pratt as part of ACSM's Distinguished Leaders in Sports Medicine and Exercise Science video series. Thanks, Mike,
Thank you, Jack,
for coming by. I just wanted to start off with a little bit about your earlier years, where you grew up. High school, did you play sports? Where did you go to undergrad school? What were you thinking at that time, and go from there?
Well, that's a tough question.
Is it?
At that age, I probably wasn't really thinking very
None
much.
of us were thinking much.
But yeah, so I'm a native of Davis, California, and I probably qualify as an academic brat. When I tell people all the places I've lived, they think my father must have been in the Army.
The Air Force or something.
Yeah,
yeah.
Instead he just did a lot of postdocs.
All right. So it's in your family, in your
Yes,
genes.
yeah, no, I'm a third generation academic. Actually,
Is that
on the
right? I
other
didn't
side
know
of my
that.
family, there's a Harvard professor from the late 1600s, I think.
Really?
So, yeah, there's a long history of
Quite a
people
genealogy there. Very
spending
neat.
too much time on academic affairs. But so we moved around a lot. I lived in Europe for a couple years. Probably my earliest connection with ACSM, although I did not realize it at the time, was that one of my elementary school classmates was Peggy Bakke, who's the daughter of Bruno Bakke.
Wow.
And I went to Shorewood Hills Elementary School, and the Bakkes lived across the street from the school.
And what town was that?
Shorewood Hills, which is a village which is part of Madison.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not Davis, that's somewhere,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
Bakke was, okay.
Yeah, so yeah, my dad was a professor at the University of Wisconsin at the same time that Bruno Bakke was there.
I'll be darned.
And but I had no clue.
You had no
I
idea.
had no idea what he did.
Of course, yeah.
So
yeah.
no, only in later years did I realize I was perhaps indirectly influenced by that.
And what year was that, Mike? When?
We were in Madison from 1960 to 1970, basically.
Okay.
Or 62 to 70.
Okay.
At which point my dad and somewhat my mom got tired of cold weather, and so we moved back to California.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I went to high school in Davis, and I had a not so noteworthy career as a football player. I don't believe, I think I played a couple of minutes. I got off the bench, but that was barely it. And
in a lopsided game, probably.
Yeah. And I also played basketball, and I was okay as a basketball player, but I came to realize that my attributes in basketball that actually were worth something were the fact that I could run and jump, and that, in fact, there was an entire sport devoted to that.
Yeah.
And so I ran track and cross country in high school,
Okay.
and then also in college at UC Davis.
So you stayed there and went to, you just said it, I was going to ask, but you went to Davis. And
and I was a modestly successful middle distance runner. I was captain of the track team and MVP, and qualified for D2 Nationals as an 800-meter runner.
Wow.
And I lettered in cross country and track. And
Excellent, yeah.
probably the main thing was I was just barely good enough to get demolished by actual real good runners. So
you got to the competition at least, right?
Yeah. So I finished last in races that Steve Scott won.
I see.
And
Okay.
I got to run against some good people, but I wasn't particularly good myself.
Yeah. Okay.
But
so what did you major in? Were you in PE at the time, or what the heck was at
no,
Davis?
It took me a while to figure out what I majored in. I started in geology and ended up in zoology. Wow. But I actually did have two exposures that were probably important there. So my coach, my cross-country coach was Bill Adams, who longtime ACSM member, exercise physiologist, and came out of University of Illinois with all the other, with Bill Haskell.
Yeah, that was quite a
Jack
crew.
Wilmore and that whole group.
All Curitin.
They were all the
students.
Curitin progeny.
Yeah.
And said, I was an 800-meter runner, and the 800 coach my first couple years, Tony DeLucia, was a PhD student working on ozone studies with Doc Adams, Doc A, our coach.
Yeah.
And so I was a subject in a number of, of their exercise science studies. I was kind of interested in it. And when I finished, I was a volunteer assistant coach for 1 year, and I audited the basic exercise science classes. And kind of as a result of that, I applied to go to the UW, where we obviously crossed paths for the first time.
Yeah.
And
I forgot when you came up there. What year?
I started in 1979.
Okay.
And
you came up for all we were offering was a master's at the time. So
yeah, I didn't really. I had been a collegiate runner, and I was interested in this, and I knew I wanted to go on and do something else, and I wasn't quite sure. And it seemed like a nice idea to go to Seattle, and the program looked good, and so I went up and I started the master's program there, master's MSPE in kinesiology.
That's right.
Degree
That's
I
what
ended
it was.
up with there.
Yeah, I had forgotten. So then you did more of your work with Hutton, or several people? I forget who all was there.
I worked mostly with Walt Sombrowicz.
Oh, Walt was there. That was Tibbetts there yet, or Nichols, or
Dick Nichols came while I was there.
Okay, but Walt was there.
Walt was, he was my primary advisor, and I did rat enzyme stuff with him. And at the end of the time I was there, I did an internship with Quinton Instrument Company. And I ended up, as part of this internship, setting up a worksite wellness program for them. And
I don't remember. I didn't know you had done that. Yeah.
And so then they hired me, at a miserably low salary to continue
After your degree?
After my degree, to continue running their worksite wellness program for a couple of years. And while I was doing that, I worked with Mike Allison, who's a good friend of mine, who was doing, I think he was doing the preventive and occupational medicine residency at UW. And I said, oh, God, that's kind of cool stuff he's doing.
Yeah.
And I decided I was going to apply to med school, so I ended up taking a couple of prerequisite classes I still needed to do, finished up at Quinton, and I started med school at the UW in 1983.
83, all right. Had you done some stuff then with Larry Rao? Or
I took the basic physiology classes.
Was he part of that?
Yeah, with Larry
team
Rao.
Then? Okay.
Yeah, and actually a guy I ran with at Davis was a PhD student with him at the time.
Oh.
Stu Hobbs. I'm not sure
very.
where
No, I
he's
didn't
gone
know
on.
him. Okay.
So, but it is interesting. There are a lot of people. Well, our field is small enough that if you go very many places, you cross paths with a lot of different people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Quinton himself was very much involved early on with ACSM, and with the current dean at the med school now, Paul Ramsey, is his primary care physician.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? So Paul was in charge of
family medicine,
or internal medicine. So he was one of my attendings when I was in med school.
Is that right?
Yeah.
He's a great guy,
Yeah,
rower,
good guy.
exerciser.
Yeah. But I actually joined ACSM while I was a grad student at the UW.
At the UW.
I joined in 1981.
Because Bob was deeply involved in it.
Yeah, he was. I think he encouraged all of us to join. And I didn't actually go to an annual meeting until 1985, which was at the end of my second year of med school. And I was kind of the classic student attendee of ACSM. I went the week before I had to take board exams, so I had to study for national boards while I was at ACSM. And I got there a day ahead of my friend Mike Allison, who, being a real doctor, actually could pay for a room, which I couldn't. So I had to convince somebody to let me sleep on the floor in their in their
right.
room, and it was the total low budget approach
Yeah.
to ACSM.
But the fact that you were your second year of medical school and went to ACSM, I mean, you already had this interest from your master's work
yes.
already. I mean, you knew this was something you were interested in.
Yeah,
at that point.
Really, when I started medical school, I already was thinking I would either do primary care sports medicine, or I would do sort of exercise public health.
Yeah.
I was leaning more towards sports medicine, and in fact, that ACSM meeting helped open my eyes to the fact that you could do public health and physical activity. Ken Powell and Bill Haskell put together a symposium there, and it was Ken, Bill, there's another guy who was a fellow with Ken, who ended up going to the UW actually, and Carl Casperson.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm going to talk to Ken in an hour.
Okay, yeah. Well,
But
so Ken.
Yeah, what a group. I mean, gee.
Yeah. So that convinced me that actually one could do this.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I was sort of looking ahead to go to CDC and.
Wow. And so how did you do your? So did you do any of your rotations or anything? Almost change your mind, or?
Well, the road, no, not really.
Not really. Okay.
I was interested in this stuff. I liked. I had a good cardiology rotation at the UW. I liked that. I liked the public health rotation.
Was Tom Robertson there then? In cardiology?
I think it.
Because he does a lot of exercise stuff.
Yeah, I think he's more in pulmonary.
He is.
medicine.
That's right. He
I
is.
actually,
Yes, he
I
is,
actually was a subject in
He
some
is.
of the pulmonary
Yes,
studies.
he is. Yeah.
And the guys who were the climbers, I was very, very into altitude physiology.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Hornbein.
I loved the best lecture in medical school.
I've been to it.
Was
Yeah,
Hornbein's altitude physiology,
yeah.
epic Everest, West Ridge of Everest climb.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of exposure to these people that
Yeah. Wow.
that convinced me this might be a good idea.
Yeah.
I had really good guidance from Nate Smith.
Who just passed away last year.
Really, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Because Nate really mentored me on the field, and I did a summer research. You get some kind of funding to do summer research. I did a summer research project with him on pre-participation physicals at I think it's Lakeside High School.
Well, Lakeside's a private school
Yeah.
in North Seattle.
In North Seattle,
Yeah, probably Lakeside.
he had a connection with them,
Yeah.
and we did the study there,
Yeah.
which actually got published just after I got out of med school. But
Did you do a residency then, or what did you do as soon as you got out of there? Then
so, just the other point from medical school that was interesting is Nate set me up to go to Stanford, and I worked with Bill Haskell, Jack Farquhar, and Peter Wood at Stanford. So that was really
during med school.
During med school, at the end of my third year of med school.
Oh wow!
I got to do a
opportunity.
Yeah, and these guys were wonderful, and they really encouraged me to do this kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
So I've known these Stanford folks since I was in
Was
med school.
Paffenbarger there then?
Paff was not there.
Imin Lee. Did you overlap with any of those people?
No.
I don't remember the timing.
Steve Fortman was there. Robert Saperco. Abby King was just starting there. So.
Good group. Wow.
Yeah, it was a good group.
Well, Haskell himself.
Yeah. So I went. So I matched into a preventive medicine, occupational medicine residency. I went to the Mayo Clinic. I spent a year there and was able to get an NIH fellowship to cover getting a master's degree in public health.
Gee
I did an MPH at the University of Minnesota with the cardiovascular physiology folks there. And as a result of, and along the way, I actually had met Ken Powell and had visited CDC, and Ken was trying to get me to come to CDC for the EIS fellowship there.
So what years were you at Mayo?
I was at Mayo 87, 88.
Okay.
And then University of Minnesota, 88, 89, and I did
For
some,
the MPH.
for the MPH, and I did some moonlighting. It's still
Okay.
connected with Mayo.
Okay.
And the person I work with there, who I still bump into, is Todd Miller. I don't know if you
No,
know
I don't
Todd.
know.
He's a cardiologist with a lot of interest in exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So
Ken's trying to get you to come to
Ken's
CDC.
Ken was trying to get me to come to CDC. They wanted me, the group at NHLBI wanted me to go there, and the guy I was going to work with there, Andy Dannenberg, left to go to Hopkins. And long story short, and it was a long story, but we won't go into that. Long story short, I ended up at CDC in the epidemiology fellowship program, EIS, there, with Ken as my mentor.
Wow.
And that was a huge break. So I showed up there. Greg Heath was there. Carl Casperson, Ken.
So that was 90?
That was starting in '89.
89.
So starting in '89, and I did the EIS fellowship, and then continued and completed my preventive medicine residency at CDC.
Was that a 3-year deal, or what? How's that
EIS
work?
is 2 years. The preventive medicine residency is 2, but one of the years can overlap. So,
I see.
So yeah, it was a
3 years.
3 years worth of training, and so yeah. So I went to Atlanta. You know, I'm a West Coast guy. I went to Atlanta for a 2-year training program, and I'm still there.
You're still there, yeah.
So,
Evidently, Dick Nichols is at Emory. Is that?
yes,
right?
this was funny. So
Because I haven't seen him in a long.
yeah. So I bump into Dick every once in a while. Yeah, he's at Emory, and I'm actually an adjunct professor at Emory now.
Oh, neat.
But I'm in the School of Public Health.
Mm-hmm.
So
Very nice. So finally at CDC, you're gainfully employed.
yeah, it took a while.
It took a while, right?
Yeah, I ran out of degrees I could get, and so
Well, as you said at the beginning, it's part of your genealogy. That's to be expected, right, with a professional student.
yeah, I think so. I'm probably lucky that I didn't go back to get another degree.
Yeah. Well, tell me now what you've been in a couple of different roles at the CDC, right? Because I thought last year you told me what was something international or something had changed. I forgot exactly what it was.
Well, as in any government organization, there's enough reorganizing and moving around that I've been in several roles.
Okay.
But really, the first part of my career at CDC was sort of working my way up through the chain related to physical activity.
Right.
And
That's what I remember.
And I did 2 stretches as I was the initial branch chief when the physical activity branch at CDC formed in 1996, and I did that for 3 years, and at which point David Buckner came in as the branch chief, and I moved to start up the WHO Collaborating Center at CDC. It was more or less at the same time, and began to do a little bit more global work on physical activity.
Yeah, that's what it was. And Buckner came from UW, didn't he, to
Yes.
the CDC?
Yeah, there's a strong linkage there.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's
And you're still doing the global stuff now, Mike? Or
yeah. So then when David left to go to University of Illinois, I took over as the branch chief again for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
And I gave up some of the global stuff. But
Okay.
when an opportunity to go into a full-time global health position came up, I left as branch chief and took the job more or less that I'm in now, which is the director of an office for global health promotion within the Chronic Disease Center at CDC.
Which is much broader than physical activity.
It's much broader than physical activity, but it definitely includes physical activity.
Yes.
And so we're continuing to do a lot of work on global training courses for physical activity, working with WHO on physical activity issues, as well as other chronic disease prevention
So you're
issues.
traveling a lot.
Yeah, more than a reasonable person
That's
would.
what I figured. Yeah, that's the part I wouldn't like, I don't think.
Yeah.
So who is the head of the physical activity branch now.
Yeah, so when I left, they started a national search, and Joan Dorn.
I had emailed
came
her.
in,
That's
and
right. Okay.
Yeah, so Joan has been in that position, I think, a little less than a year now.
Okay.
And is taking the branch forward.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I see you every year here, so I know ACSM is still one of your top groups.
Yeah, ACSM's definitely in my blood. I have not made it to every meeting since I started at CDC, but it's been almost every one.
I was going to say it's most of them. Yeah.
2 or 3 times I've been out of the country, the week of ACSM. Other than that, I think I've been to every meeting except 2, 3, or 4 since 1990.
And you guys seem like you always have a very big popular session as well.
Yeah.
At most of these meetings.
Yeah, I think.
And I think, Mike, sorry to interrupt you, but I think that maybe you can speak to this because of your early career too. The fact that physical activity now is recognized as an important part of public health seemed to me, as a historian, a huge jump.
Yes, and
a good,
a huge change from back when we were at UW together.
Right.
And really a huge change over the last 10 to 15
Yes.
years, and a very positive one. And
Yeah.
it actually, David Buckner and I have had this conversation a few times. One of the things that I'm really proud of having started at CDC was the Sea Pines Park City Physical Activity and Public Health courses, which we started in 1995, and Russ Pate at South Carolina competed to win the right to put on these courses, and he's done just an amazing job with them. And but the people coming into those courses now think it's natural that physical activity is a core part of public health.
Yeah.
And back when we started, it was very esoteric. And it's really nice to see that. And
that is where they expect it.
Yes.
There's no, what's the deal? The big deal.
Yeah. It's well, of course. What could be more reasonable? And as following in the footsteps of some of the people like Steve Blair and Russ Pate and Bill Haskell, who really laid the groundwork for this happening, and really introduced sort of physical activity and health into ACSM, and which I think initially was more sports medicine exercise science, exercise biochemistry, and
there was not that wasn't really there at all.
Yeah, and it's the other thing that I think has really been nice with ACSM. ACSM